first category is talking about the daily instruction integration, ways that we can productively introduce AI tools for daily instruction. And we can kind of subtitle this as, using AI as a co-teacher. How can it support us in our classrooms? And here I'm going to be giving you just this large list of things you might already know, but maybe you didn't realize that AI can do to support us as teachers to kind of get us going in our classrooms. And of course, the number one thing for many of us is we can use these AI tools, whether it's a chat bot or a candy-coated platform that's pre-packaged, I guess you could say, with built-in AI features like lesson planning. And this is really wonderful for educators on the go. Getting ready, here we go. Here's a lesson plan. Here's what I need. AI can produce these things for us to get us started in our classroom. A second type of thing would be aligning our things to standards. This tends to be one of those tasks that often, we kind of forge ahead knowing what we need to teach, and we know what our lessons want to look like, and we know what we want to do with the students. But sometimes we have to sort of back up and say, how does my lesson align to my standards? And AI is really great for that. AI is really good at analyzing what you're doing in your classroom and taking that and applying it to its bank of knowledge on what your current standards are. So I always put standards alignment in there as another great use and great tool. So this one could take on many forms. That this is a broad category of something that AI is really, really good for when I'm getting ready to start my class, and it's generating lists of information, and that can run the gamut from listing me vocabulary words that are suitable for my grade level for the topic that I'm teaching, or taking it to the other end and having it generate comments, maybe comments for report cards or comments that I'm going to put on worksheets or papers or things as I'm grading them. Just using it as your ideation tool, using it to generate some of these ideas that we truly need support with as we're getting ready to step into the classroom. This one might seem kind of silly, but I really love popping this one in here because it's kind of one of those things people don't realize that AI has the ability to do. And these start coming into play when I'm building my Bellwork or I'm building engaging activities for my students. You might not realize that AI can create some really clever brain teasers for students. And this is one that I had, I believe it was ChatGPT generate for me. And these are little emoji riddles. And so I just asked it to create a list of emoji riddles for students to solve that were that would correspond with fairy tales, from Hansel and Gretel to The Ugly Duckling to Rapunzel. I didn't give it the list of fairy tales. I gave it a very broad category. And so now I'm able to take these little brain teasers one at a time and pop them into a Bellwork on a morning slide and say, let's take a minute and kind of have a brain warm up using the brain teasers that AI generated for me. So that's kind of a fun one to look at. Staying in the same category of fun ideas, I'm a big fan of riddles, and I was able to realize that AI does a nice job of making age-appropriate riddles that get their brains thinking just a little bit, but not too much. And you can see these are very common objects that these riddles are about. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body. Looks like my text got cut off. But as the students see that riddle on a Bellwork or at a big opening slide of the day, they can think about it. They can talk about it with a neighbor and come up with an answer, or we can share the answer and talk about why it fits the riddle. So that was another little great time saver that we can use AI for. And then again, would you rather questions. These are great for icebreakers. These are great for just starting your class to get kids thinking. And this is another thing that AI can produce in that whole list category in volumes. Lots and lots of would you rather questions. And this is another one that's really great for icebreakers because students can turn to a partner and not only they can say, whether they choose a pet dragon or a pet unicorn. I'd probably take the dragon. But they can actually explain to their neighbor why. And it's a good way, really at the beginning of the year, for students to get to know each other. So I kind of file all of these three things down here under that category of generating lists. What that would look like in a classroom, this is an actual example of my Bellwork for my classroom that I use every single day. And one thing that I think is quite remarkable is there are 6 items on this Bellwork that I pre-created that now last me my entire school year. So what I did with this is, so you can see everything that I have a red star next to is something that I had AI generate for me. But I didn't have the AI list feature generate just one thing for me. I had it make about 195 of each of these things. So we start up here, and I told ChatGPT to generate me about 195 age appropriate inspirational quotes. And so I have all of these. I told it to make me 185 riddles with the solution. I asked it to generate every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, excluding weekends, between the beginning of September and the end of June. And I asked it to create a joke of the day with a solution. And so why I bring this up is because what I was able to do with all of this information that was generated by AI is I was able to use Canva, if you're familiar with Canva, but it has a feature on it called bulk create. I was able to take all of these things and bulk create 185 slides for my entire school year. So now when I come into class, my warm-ups are all ready to go. I have an inspirational quote with today's date, with a warm-up, with a joke of the day, and all I need to do is fill out this part. What supplies do they need for the day? What's on our daily agenda? And what's the homework for the day? So it has saved me a lot in the long run, because I don't have to like, okay, what am I going to do today? What's my quote going to be? What, I have a lot here right in front of me. So I thought this was a really good example of a robust way we can take AI and lift that load for us in our classroom prep. Moving on, this whole concept of defining vocabulary, in my opinion, has really changed a great deal for both students as well as teachers, because now we have a tool in our hand that doesn't define one word at a time. It can define banks of words at a time, and we can modify the level of definition we're getting back. I say that because I can't tell you the number of times I have encouraged a student to use a dictionary to look up a word, and when they've gone to look up that word, it just had the same word and it ends in ing, and they still don't know what the meaning of the word is. And so, we can start using AI to support us in our own vocabulary words that we're using in our class, in the definitions being specific to our lexile that we need with our students, our grade level, content, topic, and definitions that are useful and understandable for our students. But the students can also do that as well. So I feel like we're kind of reaching a point where we won't be using, I've historically used dictionary.com in the past few years, or even had them Google a definition. And I think we're reaching a point where we're going to start kind of jumping over that and directly into using AI, both as teachers and as students, to start giving us our definitions, but allowing us to modify the definition response that's coming back to us in a way that makes it more understandable. So, and here my list, kind of amusing, but here my list of terms was actually generated as a filler for the end of a class that I was doing with students. So we've been doing a crime scene in our class, and if you've ever done stations with students, you might know that early finishers are like, oh no, and you've got several of them working over here, and you have several early finishers over here, and you do not know what to do with those early finishers. And so this was something I was able to generate really fast. And it was just, I asked for a list of terms associated with the genre of mystery, and it came up with this list of terms, this list of definitions, which I was very quickly and easily able to plop into a crossword puzzle. So now I have something for my early finishers to do. So it was kind of a quick way to generate a resource for the students to use to sort of keep them a little bit occupied as they were finishing their stations early, because it does happen. And on that note, talking about reading passages and generating questions. That's one of the most wonderful things about these large language or language learning models, is the fact that they can write passages, but not just that. And they write very well. They write without errors, without grammar mistakes. I can't say they write without content mistakes. And I'm sure that's something that's been talked about in previous sessions, because that is one of the inherent risks with AI. But they also can level reading passages for us, which is amazing. So if we give AI our vocabulary and our topic and our content area, and we ask for passages at different levels, we are taking what our students need, especially our students in special needs, and providing them with a more valuable resource than just the one resource that we've often had over the years, which is what's pre-written. And I find this to be incredibly valuable with my students with special needs. And then, of course, you can take it a step further, which many of us have probably already discovered. And once that passage is written, we can follow up and ask for multiple choice questions. We can follow up and ask for true and false questions, fill in the blank questions, and we can continue and get all of this information that can now be used quite productively in our classrooms. So this example here is just a very small example of states of matter passage that I had ChatGPT write for me. And then I followed up at a later time to get some questions, comprehension questions for my students. And rubric writing, again, this is a great thing. Lots of people are raving about that AI has the ability to do. I do mine in ChatGPT, but we have lots of tools out there that are now, I call them candy coated, and it's probably a phrase that seems unusual, but we have lots of tools out there that now have programming over the top of the underlying language model. I call them candy coated. Why? Because they're a little bit easier for us to use. And so, they have this pre-built feature that you click a button, type in some information, and you're going to get yourself a rubric, and you don't have to prompt engineer as much as you would on a different site like ChatGPT. However, either way, you're getting useful resources. This one is a rubric. It's one of the first things I discovered when I was playing with AI, playing with ChatGPT 2 years ago. Kind of hard to believe. 2 years ago, but discovered how I could get myself this beautiful analytical rubric by typing in a little bit of information and doing a little prompt engineering. And it has changed things dramatically, whether I'm creating the entire rubric or whether I'm just using AI to give me the stuff in between, which sometimes, if you've ever written a rubric, it's not necessarily the rubric itself that's hard. It's thinking about what one or two words we need to change in our middle columns that sometimes is more challenging than anything else. I often know what criteria I want, and I often know what the good ones are going to look like and what the not so good ones are going to look like and what I'm looking for. For me, it's the in-between stuff. And that is one of the things that I use AI for when I'm building rubrics. Okay, going along with this idea of list creating that we talked about a few minutes ago, this idea of generating examples is awesome. And it can happen when the students are in the room with you, or maybe minutes before the students are coming right into the room with you. Because often we reach a point in our classrooms where we're asking students questions, we're asking them to give us examples, we're giving examples, and then everything stalls. And so having AI in your back pocket, having a chat bot live and open and ready to go is a really great way to get examples that we can continue providing to the students. The analogy I like to use here is when I'm teaching kinetic energy and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm heading out the door. The last thing that I actually have is kinetic energy. So I rely on ChatGPT to give me those examples of kinetic energy to share with the students. And so it's just a really great way to get it to generate some examples that can be relevant to what you're teaching. The one right here was actually from a student teacher of mine. And she was struggling with, what can I ask the students is my question out the door. I said, give it a try. Ask ChatGPT what it suggests. And what's wonderful about these tools, as we've probably already discovered, you have endless options. You don't like the first 10 that it gives you, ask for 10 more. Ask for 10 more. It's going to continue giving examples until you really find some that you like and some that are useful for what you're doing. So mentor text, I am finding more and more, is something that I really appreciate that AI is able to do for me and able to do for students. So a lot of times we ask our students to write, and again, this kind of dabbles in one of the fears that many of us have had, about it doing the writing for the students. And so I like to talk about this topic from a perspective of it's model writing. It's generating mentor text for students so that they understand the format of the writing we're asking them to do. And so my example here comes from a science perspective because I'm a science teacher. And it's having a claim, evidence, reasoning report written. And what's so nice about it is when you prompt engineer, when you put in the information that you have just taught. So for me, I have my students make these kinetic energy popsicle stick chains. They weave these these popsicle sticks together and they make these massive long chains and they explode them all over the classroom. And it's a great big fun, but a lot of mess. And then they have to take evidence. They have to take qualitative evidence that shows that energy transferred through that system. So first of all, their CER has many layers to it, right? They've got their own observations, their own experience, and all of the things that they have done. And they have to write this novel piece of writing, this new piece of writing that hasn't been written before because it's based on their own experience. Yet I need to be able to share with the students an example of what I am expecting. And so here's where this mentor text, this model text really comes into it for me, because I can support them in what the claim is, because they all pretty much have the claim, because that's what we're trying to prove in our investigation. The evidence is going to be specific to the students. The evidence is something they've already written. And so going into that conversation about, academic integrity and, supporting students in writing, but not having them use AI for the writing, this is a good example because the evidence was gathered by them. They wrote that in pen and pencil. They wrote that sitting at their popsicle stick chain. Now they have to take their evidence and pull it into this CER. And so when I'm seeing their piece of writing, I know it's not written by AI because I see their evidence that they created. And so they pop that into their CERs. And of course, the reasoning is the really tough part. The reasoning for my science kids is the thinking part. Why and how did that kinetic energy move through the system? And so not only does model writing support the student and showing them how it's expected to look, but honestly, it supports me as the teacher teaching that form of writing, especially when we're dealing with a set of standards, at least with science. And I think lots of other subjects, next generation standards have all rolled out relatively recently. We're all kind of struggling to get by and learn all of the next generation standards. So this is a nice little lift that AI can give us.